Today I'm deeply honored to be presenting for the first time a distinguished alumna of the Wellington School. And I want you to read her biography in the program. I'm not going to read it for you. It's an impressive list of accomplishments. We're unlike some other schools, though, in which this kind of distinction marks a lifetime of achievement. Because you are, Cynthia, among our oldest alums, I let that sink in. In my previous schools, I was when I met with the alums, I would help them with their walkers and get them there. Not at the Wellington School. It took time for us to be ready to do a recognition for a distinguished alumnus or alumna. The Wellington School was founded as a leap of faith. It came from a variety of founders who looked around Columbus and said, we can do better. There can be more interesting, out-of-the-box education. And they took the leap of faith of actually starting a school. Cynthia Callender Dungey encapsulates that notion of taking a leap of faith. When she came to the Wellington School, the program in which she enrolled didn't exist. Highly successful in her previous school, she felt she could do better, and she took a leap of faith. So when Governor Kasich said to her, quite by surprise, would you be willing to take over the Department of Jobs and Family Services? You will have 3,000 employees and a $3.5 billion budget. Did she think about it? Did she weigh the pros and cons? No, this is a person who has, over time, the quality of being able to take a leap of faith. I feel honored to be here today, particularly on the part of the founders who dreamed of someday having students who would graduate from the Wellington School who would be out making a difference for the people of Ohio and the people of the United States. And Cynthia Dungey is exactly that person. I had mentioned that we're doing some research around the word alumnus, alumna, alumni, alumni, and alum. And in our research, we had found, among other things, that alum is a word for complex chemical reaction. That may describe your life to some extent, too. But we also found a definition that is not frequently known. Alum means the thing or person that is exactly wanted. Now, what I'm struck by is the fact that we are in a position at the Wellington School where we are ready to have a distinguished alum, and we have exactly the person who's wanted. Cynthia Dungey, it has been a pleasure to get to know you a little bit. The first time we met was coffee at Starbucks without the coffee. I asked for 15 minutes because I wanted to meet her. There had been an article in the Dispatch in which she had said kind things about being at the Wellington School, and I wanted to meet you. And but 15 minutes, because the state of Ohio needs you. And we spoke for an hour and a half of an energizing and joyous conversation. We later had Cynthia come to be on a panel for one of our students who was presenting on issues of the minimum wage. And the student, it was really quite delightful to tell this student that you worked in a Republican administration, because this particular student felt that Bernie Sanders needs to move left. That's kind of his position. And he was quite terrified. And then just before you arrived, I said, she's worked for Democrats too, which seemed to calm him. But the wonderful thing in that particular interaction was Cynthia's ability to challenge our student, to make him feel like he was part of an intellectual community, and to honor the work that he was doing. So in every regard, it is my very great pleasure to induct the first ever distinguished alumnus, alumna, alumni, alumni of the Wellington School, class of 1989, the first class of the Wellington School, Cynthia Callender Dungey. Pleasure. Really a pleasure. Oh, yes, yes. And now a picture for our people. Okay.
Greetings. Greetings. Good morning. All right, I want to make sure you're awake now. You know, it is truly a pleasure and honor to be here with you this morning, and I think I'd be remiss if I first did not acknowledge and say thank you to my family. I will tell you, without them, I'm fairly certain I wouldn't be where I am today because of their support. But my family is not necessarily those who are connected to me only by blood. I am supported by a large extended family. So in addition to my relatives, I would also like to say thank you to my extended family members of the Garrick family and the Parks family. I will tell you that my pathway to where I am today would have not been an experience to share had it not been for the love and support of an entire village that took to raise me. You've heard a lot about the distinguished experience of being a Wellington alum. The fact that I am honored to be a part of that first graduating class. And I want to emphasize the word first. Because for me, Wellington really was an experience of many firsts. There was the first day of school. I remember that day like it was just yesterday. And despite what you said, it was really just yesterday. For me, that was the first time that I realized I was a minority. You see, prior to coming to Wellington, every single one of my classrooms looked exactly like me. Each individual had the same color of skin. We came from the same neighborhoods. We lived in the same and similar households. So for me, it was the first time that I had ever been a minority. Then there was the first time that I decided to wear my school uniform home. I like to paint a picture of my neighborhood. I came from the near east side of Columbus. For many, it was a neighborhood that others looking in saw poverty. Can you imagine stepping off of the Coda bus with that nice plaid skirt, the blue Oxford, and let's not forget that hideous blue bow tie that stamped Wellington 1,000 times. Founders, you should have done something about that a long time. Can you imagine the response I received as my friends saw me in the uniform? They began to tease me because they said I looked funny. I dressed funny. And now, according to them, I was talking funny. Then, of course, there was the first time that I found myself completely overwhelmed by the academic rigor of the challenge courses at Wellington. You see, up until then, I had always been set aside and apart. I was always considered to be advanced. I was in all the honors classes. I was a straight A student. But what I never realized is that I had never had to study before. For me, academics became really, really easy. I wasn't challenged. And so for the first time, and again, emphasizing the word first, I found myself lost. Now I want you to imagine this. When I attended Wellington, I was 16 years old. I arrived not in kindergarten, but in the 11th grade. Some of you know what that's like to have a female child that's going to 11th grade. You're kind of uncertain about yourself. You're right at that moment where you're not really quite sure who you are or what you are. I began to really question whether or not the choice to attend Wellington was in fact the right decision for me. I was feeling pretty uncomfortable in my own skin. I was bothered by the things that I felt like I couldn't conquer. And it seemed as though I spent a lot of time focusing on those things that made me different from my peers. But in that good old Wellington spirit, there were many pep talks, many words of encouragement. And let me not forget the fact that Wellington recognized the need to individualize a curriculum for just me, little old me. You see, up until I went to Wellington, I had actually taken 7 years of German. And when I got to Wellington, it wasn't a course that was offered. And so, you know, you needed 4 years of foreign language. And I kept thinking, what are we going to do? Here comes Miss McGrath. She decides she's going to have Spanish 1 for an 11th grader. just for little old Cynthia. And I was eventually joined by Jennifer Beam, and she and I had a great time in our classroom of 2. I mean, where else would you be able to have an individualized curriculum? Where else would you have the opportunity to reach for the stars and to know the difference between where you have come and the path that you want to go on? It didn't take long for me to learn a personal and a valuable lesson in life. You see, up until my time at Wellington, I had been taking the easy route out. I had been focusing on my differences rather than the challenges that laid ahead of me. It was the first time that I actually really had to realize that there's no one in the world that's going to do for you what you should be doing for yourself. So I stopped feeling sorry for myself. I confronted my fears. I had to identify what they were. And I realized that my fear was failure. For the first time, I had to face that there was a possibility that I wasn't going to be at the top. I was afraid to fail. But unlike what I had been doing for the previous weeks, I decided to set a plan. I decided that in order for me to succeed, it was going to be really important for me to take some personal responsibility and be accountable for where I was in life. So I paraded down the hallways and met with every single one of the faculty members and told them the truth. I'm struggling. I'm in 11th grade. This curriculum does not match what I'm used to. I have no idea what you're talking about during half of the classes. My suggestion, could you please offer me the 10th grade curriculum? I'd like to take it home and study on my own. Most of my classmates didn't know, but I actually took the 10th grade curriculum home and I taught myself the 10th grade curriculum in order to do the 11th grade work. For me, it was important for me to accept personal responsibility and do what I needed to do to be successful. And it was through hard work that I was able to not only achieve succeeding, but doing very well at Wellington. Now that I look back on that experience, I realized that I was simply being prepared for the role that I have today. As you heard, I now serve as the director of the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. In this capacity, I oversee a budget of $3.5 million. I have a staff of approximately 3,000 employees. But like Wellington, I've decided that I want to be a bridge. I want to be a bridge for new opportunities. I want to understand what it is that prevents families from moving themselves forward. You know, unlike many of us, we are breathing a breath of relief now that the recession is over. There are still many families in Ohio that are still struggling. We have over 11 million residents in the state of Ohio, and more than 1.7 million of them today are receiving food assistance. That means they're struggling to meet the basic needs of their families. And unlike what we sometimes read in the newspaper, 50% of these individuals are working. We're supporting the working poor. And so I have decided to take a new strategy about how we actually deliver our services as a department. We are a public service agency. We need to understand the importance of restoring humanity in human services. And to do that, I've simply deployed the same lessons that I've learned at Wellington. You see, first, I've decided that it's important for us to figure out how to stabilize our families. How do we do that? Well, the first thing you do is you have to help people sort of meet their fear. If I'm concerned about being evicted, I'm concerned about my lights being shut off. I'm concerned that I don't have enough food to feed my babies. Those are the needs that have to be met immediately. Just like my concern of failure. Once those are met, then I think it's important to figure out, how do we do an assessment to move that family forward? What is it that's preventing them from being able to take care of their own needs? And for me at Wellington, that was the lack of academic preparation for the course rigor. So I had to study and work harder than I'd ever worked before. But for many of these families, it will be a different course. The path will be that they may need counseling. education, training, a pathway to do something different. And once those barriers are identified, much like those that I identified myself when I was in school, it's important to set a plan. See, my plan was to always be the very best that I could be at whatever I tried to do. I knew that that was the only thing that I ever had to offer, was to be the very best that I could be. Many of these families want the exact same thing, but sometimes they just don't know how to get there. And so as we are using some of these strategies, we are helping to identify these barriers, and we want to be able to individually address them so that, like me, they too will one day be a graduate. You see, I made it through Wellington, and I graduated. And I graduated among 31 of my peers who are all great leaders. I'm proud of the accomplishments and achievements of Wellington, but I'm hoping to carry the torch on to those that we serve in public service. Carry it on in a way that will allow them to also graduate, to graduate from the need of continuing to need public assistance, to graduate and put themselves in a position where they can be self-sufficient. And it is because of my experience at Wellington that I believe that I was uniquely qualified and in the right place at the right time to serve you, to serve the 1.7 million Ohioans that depend on us every single day to meet their basic needs. But eventually, I'm hopeful that I can work myself out of a job. I would like to live in a state where people don't have to worry about the inability to meet their basic needs. I would like to live in a state where folks don't have to feel as though they have to be humiliated to walk in a public services agency to ask for assistance. I'd like to live in a state where education and training opportunities are available for every single person. On behalf of my family and I just want to thank Wellington for if it was not for you, your vision, and the open arms that I received, I'm not so sure that I'd be where I am today. You see, the path that Wellington has prepared me. You were my bridge. You were my village. You will continue to be that for me. And as I carry on the torch, know that you live with me every single day in my heart. Best wishes.